They fixed it. What was my camera doing in the freezer? How long was it there for? Did I really put it in the freezer for that long? I'll answer those questions in just a minute. It was the only way I could figure out to test and see if my camera was still having the issue it was having before I sent it off to Precision Camera Repair. Now this is just one of those short videos. It's just kind of informational for you out there. It's not a rant. It's not a praise. It's just, here is my experience with a recent Sony repair. So really, actually, the only camera that I own from Sony is the A7RII Mark II, and the only lens I own from them is this cheap kit lens. I mostly use adapted lenses. And I started to have this issue with this Sony. It started last fall in Alaska. In colder temperatures, the mechanical shutter was acting really slow.
One of the things I'm experiencing with the Sony when we get into this extreme cold, we've been shooting below zero now for quite a while, is the shutter seems to slow down. I'm not talking shutter speed, but the actual mechanical shutter itself. It's not affecting the pictures, but one of the things that Sony shooters could do, you can turn on the fully electronic shutter. That, of course, avoids the situation. I'm curious what exactly is happening, because as I said, it doesn't seem to affect the exposure at all. I don't know. As I find out more, I'll share.
It would click and then release. It wasn't affecting the images because of that electronic front curtain shutter, and I could, of course, turn it to electronic shutter and it would work just fine. And again, it didn't affect the images, but it was a little concerning. And then it started to happen in Yellowstone, where we experienced some ridiculously cold temperatures, -25 Fahrenheit. These are the temperatures I'm talking about. Now, this wasn't an electronics issue, I didn't think. It really seemed to be some type of mechanical issue, and somehow the cold was causing that. As time went on, it started to happen in not so cold temperatures. I found myself on the Washington, D.C. trip with McKay Photography Academy. It felt freezing to us.
It's cold. I don't want to be a whiner.
But the thermometer said it was about 35, so it wasn't even below freezing, and it started to do that. Then we went back up to Alaska in March, or actually it was the Alaska trip before that. I don't remember. And in coldish temperatures, around zero, the shutter, the mechanical shutter that closes inside, actually went down and didn't go back up. And it stayed that way for about a day. Actually, no, overnight. I warmed it up and it released. And I thought, well, I think it's time to see about getting the service. Now, I happened to be at a Sony event and I thought I could bug these guys and say, hey, can I test out the Pro even though I don't qualify for the Pro? You have to have more gear than I have. But you know, I'm not very good at that. I'm not one of those people that tries to get things that I don't deserve, usually. So, and I thought it would be good experience to share with you all. Now, let's make this story a little bit shorter and I don't ramble on so long. So I waited until I knew there was a period of time where I could be without my Sony camera and be okay, and I made the decision to go on the Croatia trip without the Sony, one, so that I could send it in for repair, and two, so that I could really test the GH5 and see how it did for photos and video. And I was pretty happy with it. You can go watch that Croatia video. So, May 1st, I sent it off to Precision Camera. Now, it's out of warranty. I bought this the day it came out. That was early August 2015. So this camera's coming up on 2 years old. Not quite there. A year and a half is a good round number to say. And it's seen some serious use. I don't know what its shutter actuations are. I should have researched that. Maybe I'll figure it out before I publish this video and I'll put it down below. But number aside, it has seen some incredibly dusty and conditions that just aren't so friendly for electronics, moving parts, or otherwise. Mostly Tanzania. Tanzania was incredibly dusty, the safari there. I wouldn't change anything, but except maybe bring a pillowcase, because that is a great and simple way to keep your gear easily accessible, but out of the main kind of billowing dust when you're driving down some of the dusty roads. So it was extremely dusty there. Not only lots of dust on the sensor that I was cleaning off, but I think some dust into the gearing system. So May 1st, I sent it off to Precision Camera. The charge that you have to spend or pay just to send it off is about $350. That does not mean that you automatically pay that, though. That's just kind of the default amount. I did have to spend my own money on shipping it as well. I spent $22. I didn't insure it because sometimes I like to gamble. It arrived just a few days later, and I got an email from them on May 8th that said the charge will be $430.78. That includes shipping back to you. We will charge the unit an associated item repair, a complete repair and return of all functions to factory specs, autofocus, test, check, recalibration, realignment, and parts used, shutter, and associated parts. So that was 1 week later, and that was May 8th that they wrote that and said, this is what we're going to do. I said, they asked for my approval. They said, otherwise we can just send it back for $30 shipping. I said, no, please fix it for that amount. And 1 week later, I had it back. So it was a 2-week turnaround time, and I'm pretty happy with that. Right at the end of that 2-week turnaround time, I happened to be at another Sony event, and they had cleaning techs on staff, including some of the guys that worked at Precision Camera. So I got to chat just for a minute at breakfast with one of them, and he said that it's very common. I shouldn't say very common, but they've seen this happen. A small amount of dust or grime gets in the gear motor that shoves the shutter mechanism back up, and it makes the teeth catch, and then it can't go back up. Now, what I didn't get to pick his brain about that I really wonder is, how did the cold affect it? Did it make the grease a little bit less viscous and it wasn't able to kind of squish that bit of grime out of the way? Or what? That's my theory. I'd love to hear your theories down below. And overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this process. 2-week turnaround time, that's not too bad. It is certainly longer than the big guys like Canon and Nikon. Their turnaround time is usually faster. Charge cost is definitely a little bit higher as well. My research led me to believe that shutter repairs for Canon and Nikon run about $300 if you're not part of their CPS program. If you're part of the CPS program, you get those 30%, 20% discounts on repairs. So if you have more gear, it'll be cheaper. Another thing that I just want to mention, that if you qualify for the Sony Pro level repair, that Sony says that is going to improve greatly this year with faster turnaround times, loaner gear while you're missing your gear, and a service much more similar to Canon and Nikon. So I really did put it in the freezer. I left it in there for about 2 hours, but I kind of had to fake that beginning shot because I didn't have the battery in it. I pulled it out of the freezer, I put the battery in it, and it thought that it only wanted to be in silent shutter. So I didn't want you to wait and watch me, press the button back into it. So here's what happens I've found with the Sony cameras when they get ultra cold. The internal memory dies as well, and it forgets both recent settings, and if it gets cold enough, it forgets all of its settings. That happened to me in Alaska. It forgot date and time when I left it outside for a period of time. So the shot you saw, I had just put it back in for just long enough, right, taken it out, put the battery in, then stuck it in there just for the shot. But it was in the freezer for about 2 hours. It didn't exhibit that issue right after I put the battery back in it. It is working now, and I'm very happy about that. I'll continue to report on how the Sony is doing over the next couple of weeks. It's so nice when you send your camera off. I mean, I don't love paying that much, but it comes back so squeaky clean. Everywhere is clean. As I said, this camera's seen some abuse, and it's now in much better shape. All right? I think that's all I wanted to say. If you found this interesting, if you've got a Sony good story or bad story for repair of cameras, not one from your uncle or your brother or you heard through your girlfriend, but one that actually happened to you, leave that down in the comments down below. It seems that here in the US, overall, people are generally pretty happy with Precision Camera and their turnaround time. That is really your only choice for Sony repair. And in warranty, it is, of course, covered and free. Out of warranty, there's a charge, and it does seem to be a little bit higher than Canon and Nikon. So something you might want to consider if you're trying to figure out which camera company to go with. But I don't know. Should you really buy a camera thinking it's going to break and the repair costs might be a little bit more? I don't know. You decide. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, give it a quick thumbs up. And I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Bye-bye.